while this could be inspiring or not, for whatever reason, I feel like sharing more behind the scenes of what it's like in my studio, which means there's some good, bad, and ugly. I think if I wrote a book about what it's like to be an artist, I'd call it Inspiration and Self-Loathing in the Studio. You know, it's kind of hard to paint and talk and think at the same time, but I'll do my best. So much has come up for me while I've been making this painting, just about my art practice and running an art business and what am I doing? Some days it feels very clear and other days it really doesn't. So this painting is making me think about my artist voice a lot and what it is. I noticed that in life, I have a really terrible situational awareness, and it's kind of translating into my art in a funny way, because it's like, if you get, I don't know if I can zoom in, but if you look at the eye and kind of the eyes of my wildlife paintings in general, like they're hyper realistic, and as you sort of move out from that focus, it becomes looser, more abstract, less intense. And that's kind of a reflection of how I look at the world. Like when I walk into a room, I won't notice 90% of what's in the room. I'll usually just notice one thing and I'll kind of zoom in on it and really examine it. So I'm starting to think that's part of my style, at least for my realistic work, is to actually incorporate hyperrealism, realism, and abstraction all in one painting. As a friend of mine up in Martha's Vineyard sent me a link to this gallery that he likes, and they had these really amazing hyper-realist works from a painter, and it was like a paper bag with like a newspaper underneath and stuff in the bag and stuff behind it, all in hyper-realist detail. And I was like, wow, technically extremely impressive, but the work didn't resonate. Like the subject matter and having such detail everywhere, I was like, it doesn't resonate. And I think a certain amount of hyperrealism does resonate because it pulls you in, it pulls your focus. It's sort of like the connecting point into one of my paintings, at least, but then I want it to sort of dissipate and have this feeling of expansion towards the edges. So I'm working on this, and it's kind of funny because I've been an artist my whole life. I mean, as far back as I can remember, but I've only been painting full time for the last 3.5, 4 years, and I've always felt like if anyone were to ask me, what I felt my artist voice was, I don't know if I could ever articulate it well. And I'm still working on it. And I feel less pressure around defining it exactly. I'm just playing and I'm experimenting, and I feel like it's sort of organically evolving, and I'm slowly starting to understand it. And I think that's all right. I was talking to a musician friend the other day, and he was saying that he doesn't think it's necessarily a good idea to define, your own creativity. Like, it might be limiting. And I totally understand the point he was making. But I guess I look at it like understanding why you're doing what you're doing in the way that you're doing it can actually give you confidence when you are talking to people about your work, and it can help you sort of meditate while you work and maybe refine it, which I guess maybe there's a fine line between refining something and limiting it. But my sense is that you can strengthen your body of work on the whole and over the long term, the more you have an awareness and understanding around why you're doing what you're doing and your own sort of style or signature.